is the last day of 2024, the end of week 17 of the 2024 NFL season, which means we only have 1 week left in the regular season of the 2024 NFL season. Plus, it is the second round of the college football playoff kicking off tonight between, of course, Penn State and Boise State. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to this New Year's Eve edition of Brandon's World. I am your host, your producer, your founder, Brandon Lewis. We are in collaboration with the one, the only Voltage Live. If you are wondering, no, this will not be a look back show of the year in sports like everybody likes to do this time of year. We did that during the Brandon's World Merry Christmas special, which of course aired on December 20th. If you would like to go back, you can go on audio, you can go on video, you can find on there my top 10 sports moments of the year. Also, my predictions in sports for 2025. Also, I gave away on that show my WB Slammy Awards for the entire year of 2024, as well as I did a great interview with my good friend Andrew Baca, and I played Fair or Foul, aka True or False, all things sports with my good buddy Jalen Sandvik. It was an over show, our biggest show of the year. If you have not checked out the Brains World Christmas special, make sure you go ahead and do so. But, it is going to be week 18 of the 2024 NFL season. And on Thursday, I will give you my money line picks. I will give you my best bets for week 18. This may be the hardest week 18 in the history of week 18 because I could never remember more teams that are either just playing for seeding or may not care about their matchup or even get to pick their opponent or may rest. It feels like, really outside of maybe Vikings, Lions, Steelers, Bengals, a couple of those games. Most of the games, though, really seem meaningless unless we're talking draft position. And there were so many blowouts. There were so many teams putting up over 40 points. How about the New York Giants reckoning their draft position by defeating the Indianapolis Colts? My Eagles clinching the NFC East against the Cowboys. Buffalo rolling over the Jets, putting up 40. Aaron Rodgers looking like he's quitting. The two Christmas Day games were huge blowouts and they were on Netflix. And even though I criticized the NFL for putting their Christmas games on streaming, it obviously got massive viewership. I had no problem with the Netflix stream myself. Baltimore, Kansas City took care of business. We had some tremendous games. Obviously, the Cincinnati Denver game, where Denver basically was playing for the tie in overtime to ensure that they get to the postseason. We had Washington, Atlanta on Sunday night, where Jaden Daniels had an incredible drive in overtime after Raheem Morris somehow, some way messed up the clock at the end of both the first and second halves. We had Minnesota and Sam Darnold, really take care of the Green Bay Packers, cement themselves as a legitimate contender in the NFC. Now they'll be playing the Detroit Lions week 18 Sunday Night Football for not only the number one seed, but for who will either go to Atlanta or Tampa. Both those teams will know where they'll go if they lose the game prior to Sunday night and which one will have a bye and the number one seed in the NFC. So I think, we're not going to recap every single game today. It's going to be a lot like my week 16 NFL recap, where it's not going to be as much of a recap per se. Um, what I wanted to do now is after, all the important games in the week 17 NFL dust has sort of set off and clear. I want to go through the playoff picture. I want to go through the potential head coaching vacancies. I want to go through the top order of the NFL draft. As we sort of know the top teams and who they're playing this week and how the draft order could change. Because the one thing about the NFL, and don't get me wrong, I love the NFL. It's my favorite sport. I love recapping games with you every single week. I love making my money line picks. This year, I am literally dead even with my money line picks than I was last year. Best bets, I was a little bit behind. I did go 2 for 5 this week in best bets. My only hits were Baltimore -4.5 on Christmas against Houston. I luckily hit Cincinnati -3 at Denver because T. Higgins, obviously, who went off Saturday night with over 130 yards, 11 catches, 3 touchdowns. Bengals win that bet. I just missed out on Seattle, the 3.5. Chicago got me with the hook there in that just god awful Thursday night game. And, Minnesota got me winning by 2. I took Green Bay +1.5. So, again, barely missed out there on the Packers. And then my worst bet was obviously the Colts, who I thought would take care of business against the Giants. Boy, was I wrong there. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at the top 7 teams they are right now. I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts on the playoff picture. Then I'm going to give you kind of my thoughts on obviously the draft process, the top teams. What are these teams going to do? Maybe some head coaching vacancies. So, as much as I love the NFL and the games and breaking down everything with you guys, when we get into late February, when we get into March, when we get into April, when we get into May, the what ifs and the anticipation of the NFL season, those are some of my favorite shows to do of the year. So let's look at the AFC. Right now, playoff seeding is locked. Kansas City is the 1 seed, Buffalo is the 2 seed, Houston is the 4 seed. So the Chiefs are going to rest. They go to Denver. We know Denver almost beat Kansas City in Kansas City. Listen, we know what's on the line for the Chiefs. We know, in my opinion, that they would rather rest, get that number 1 seed, let their division rival Denver Broncos actually get into the playoffs as the number 7 seed. Denver would be the third team in the AFC West. Now, I had predicted Denver to hit their over under of 5.5 this year. It easily hit. I thought they would get to 8 or 9 wins. I was not sure in an AFC that I thought Cincinnati would be better, and they really are, than what their record indicates. Their defense could not stop a fly. If Denver could get into the postseason, that was one of the things over at Championship Rings. My great debate partner, Josh Unger, did call this year. That was Denver making the playoffs. Now, he had Denver over the Chargers. I was right on that. Again, I had Denver just missing out on the playoffs by 1 game. But I think Kansas City is going to let Denver get in. I think Denver Buffalo will be your 7-2 matchup. Now, when it comes to the free seed, we saw the Ravens dispose of the Houston Texans. Listen, I said going into the year I had the Texans at 11-6, but I thought there was a chance they could be 10-7, 9-8, even with Stephon Diggs coming in. And I know he got hurt to start the year, but I thought CJ Stroud had such a good rookie year. There was going to be a little bit of a regression back to the means. Though I love the pickup of Joe Mixon in free agency from Cincinnati to add to that running back core. And for whatever reason, over the last, 6, 7 weeks, Houston's offense, which was Joe Mixon dependent for those other 3 weeks, but during the last month, teams have just shut down Joe Mixon, and Houston has been unable to move the ball offensively. So they're going to be locked into the 4 seed. Baltimore plays the Browns. That is a Saturday game. That's the 4:30 game that kicked off Week 18. ESPN, ABC, Chris Fowler, Dan Orlovsky, Lewis Riddick on the call there in Baltimore. If the Ravens win the game, which they may get a mini bye in the second half because I think they're going to blow the doors off of Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns. At the time of this recording, I don't even know if Bailey Zappi, Dorian Thompson Robinson plays. Who cares? I mean, the Browns kicked a field goal against the freaking Miami Dolphins, who can't move the ball in the cold, and Tyler Huntley beat them yesterday. So, I mean, the Ravens are 17.5 point favorites at the time of this recording. That line's going to only go up. I like Baltimore to blow the doors off of the Browns. That will cement the Ravens as the number 3 seed. Then, as I said, Houston will be the 4. And then it gets very interesting because the Pittsburgh Steelers, who remember they did defeat the LA Chargers week 3 of the year, Justin Herbert was dealing with a bum ankle at that time. That game was in Pittsburgh. Now we go to the Saturday night game where Cincinnati, who, lost in that high scoring affair, Pittsburgh put over 40 points on the Bengals back in week 13 in Cincinnati. Well, now these two teams are playing in Pittsburgh. And the Steelers, if they win, they will go to Houston in the wild card round. If they lose and the Los Angeles Chargers do defeat the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chargers would then go to Houston. Pittsburgh would go to Baltimore for round three of Steelers Ravens, this time in Baltimore, a rematch of the game that we saw the Saturday before Christmas. Very interesting scenario here. Obviously, Cincinnati needs to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. And the last game the Steelers won was week 14 against the Browns. I don't think Pittsburgh wants to go into the playoffs, even going to Houston on a 4-game losing streak. So, Cincinnati, though, they're going to be playing with their life on the line. They know it's very unlikely to get into the playoffs. They needed help from the Browns on Sunday, who, if DTR could have played a little bit better, you thought that was their opportunity for Miami to lose, because I don't know if Miami's going to lose to the Jets. We'll see if Tyrod Taylor plays for the Jets. Maybe they do. Maybe if Tua Tagovailoa doesn't play and it's Tyler Huntley, maybe the Jets come through for the Bengals. But that game's gonna be played on Sunday at 4:25, and then obviously they need Kansas City to somehow beat Denver, and I don't think Kansas City's helping Cincinnati get into the playoffs. So does that take a little bit of mojo away from Cincinnati? I'll tell you right now. I want the Bengals to win because I think it'll make for a lot more interesting drama filled on Sunday at least. But I got a feeling Steelers win here. Cincinnati will be eliminated. Pittsburgh will be the 5 seed. They will go to Houston. And that means Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers, no matter what, if the Steelers win Saturday night, they will be locked into the 6 seed. And if I'm correct, the Ravens will destroy the Browns. That means the Chargers would go to Baltimore for the Monday Night Football before Thanksgiving rematch, the Harbaugh Bowl in the wild card round of the playoffs. How about this? Chargers versus Ravens. And if you win that game, the reward for either one of those teams would be probably Kansas City for the Chargers, because I don't think that Buffalo is going to lose to Denver, or Baltimore. If they win, their reward is going to be Buffalo. So that's very fascinating to me that that's going to be a very physical game between those two teams that obviously know each other's schemes there. I would like the Ravens in that ball game to go to Buffalo, and then it comes down to Pittsburgh and Houston, and the way Houston's been playing, and Mike Tomlin and his defensive philosophy. Russell Wilson doesn't turn the football over. I think Pittsburgh could go in, win that game. They would go to Kansas City and get trounced, and then it would set up Buffalo at Baltimore. The winner goes to Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. That is the way the AFC looks right now. In the NFC, we know the Lions and Vikings obviously fighting for the number 1 seed. Philadelphia is locked into the 2. The Rams are locked into the 3. The 4 seed comes down to if New Orleans, who's a complete mess, they have an interim head coach in Darren Rizzi. I don't know who the hell would want that job because they're $80 million over the salary cap. They have no plan of quarterback, and all they have is old, aging, expensive players. They're going to lose to Tampa. I predict Tampa Bay will lock up the number 4 seed in the NFC, which means Minnesota or Detroit. Now, Detroit has gone to Tampa Bay in the past. Detroit matches up well with Tampa Bay. That would be a rematch from week 2 of this season when Tampa actually went into Detroit and won. You know, Detroit would be very motivated to get their revenge on the Buccaneers. And I actually think Minnesota at Tampa would be a hell of a first round wild card game. I think it's very likely the Lions Vikings 5-4 matchup, who again I think will be against Tampa and not Atlanta. That will be your Monday night football matchup in the wild card round because the Monday night game has to be a 5 versus 4 matchup. You know, maybe if it's I don't even see them putting the Texans on Monday night. Maybe if it was the Chargers because of Harbaugh, possibly. I doubt it. So I think Tampa Bay is in line to once again host that Monday night wild card game for the third year in a row. Remember, they lost to Dallas, they beat Philly. This year, it's going to be Minnesota or Detroit. Now, the Commanders here, they are right now the number 16 in the NFC. And again, Jane Daniels has been terrific. He's Lamar Jackson-esque. I think he's been everything you can ask for the Commanders as a franchise quarterback. They will get to essentially choose, along with the Steelers if the Ravens beat the Browns, who they face in the wild card round. Because if they lose to the Cowboys, I predict Green Bay is going to stomp Chicago. If they lose to the Cowboys, Green Bay beats Chicago. They will go to Philly, them being Washington. Green Bay would go to the Rams. If the Rams beat Dallas, Green Bay would go to Philly. The Rams would go to LA. I think the latter is the scenario the Commanders want. I think it would be, even though it'd be round three and their divisional matchups and Washington and Philly put each other very even this year, I think it's an easier ask for your rookie quarterback to go into a dome, comfortable weather, not as good a defense, especially with the Rams, even if Matthew Stafford in that offense can put up a lot of points with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And then for Green Bay, going to Philadelphia, where they did play the Eagles in week one this season, but it was not in Philadelphia, it was in Brazil. And that was a weird game. Green Bay got off to that hot start. Philadelphia came back. They came soaring. It was a back and forth game. Jordan Love got hurt on the second to last play of the game. It's a very interesting matchup between two similar style teams. Obviously, the running games there between Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, who I know my Philadelphia Eagles are going to try to get Saquon Barkley the rushing record this week. I've been saying, since it happened on Sunday against Dallas, I know he's 100 yards away. I would prefer for number 26 to not get the rushing record. I really don't care about that. I don't want to risk any sort of injury. I want to be healthy enough for the playoffs because with A.J. Brown, with Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, that offensive line, I truly believe my Philadelphia Eagles are the team to beat in the NFC. So I look at that NFC bracket right now, and Washington at the Rams is a very interesting game because I think Jane Daniels could go in there. He could upset Matthew Stafford and the Rams. If that were to happen, obviously Philadelphia then would beat Green Bay, and then it would come down to that 5-4 matchup. So Washington then, if Philadelphia beats Green Bay, Washington would then go to the winner of the Minnesota Detroit game week 18. I think obviously out of both those teams, they would want the Minnesota Vikings more so than the Detroit Lions. And then that winner of the 5-4 matchup, which again I think could be Tampa Bay, Minnesota, or Detroit, any one of them could come to Philadelphia. So interesting scenario. Whereas on the other side, in my opinion, if Green Bay were to defeat the Bears and then Commanders were to lose to a Dallas Cowboy team who should be inspired, are getting their doors blown off, you would think, by Philadelphia to end their season on a good note by sweeping the Commanders and going 4-2 in the division. If that happens, Washington goes to Philly. I like Philly in that game. Green Bay goes to the Rams. I like Green Bay in that game. Green Bay would then have an NFC North rematch no matter what in that scenario between the winner of the Vikings Lions game, who, for the record, I think would be the Lions, and then I think it would be Minnesota at Tampa Bay. And I think in that scenario, Tampa would beat Minnesota. They would go to Philly. I think Green Bay would go to Detroit. And then I think it could be likely that Green Bay goes to Philadelphia for the NFC Championship game because Green Bay's played Detroit fairly close 2 times now. They arguably should have beat them in Detroit. on that Thursday night. If Dan Campbell, the balls on that guy to go for it on that fourth down, obviously, massive call because I think he felt like that game was slipping away from him. For whatever reason, Green Bay has struggled this year against teams in their own division. They're 0-2 against Minnesota and Detroit. They're 1-4 in the division. They have 5 losses. Their only other loss at Philadelphia week 1. They can kill the really bad teams. We're not sure yet about how good they are against the great teams in the week. But that's the way I see the playoffs looking right now. In terms of the draft, again, Buffalo, they're walking to the 2 seed. They are going to New England. The Patriots played them very well 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of reports out there that Gerard Mayo, even though he's only been in New England, replacing Belichick for 1 year, that he could be on the hot seat. I think New England is going to beat Buffalo's backups. I don't think they get the number 1 pick. Houston, we know they're resting. Can Will Levis or Mason Rudolph get a victory against the Houston Texans and get them out of the number 2 pick? Which means if that happens, if the Tennessee Titans defeat the Houston Texans, who will be resting, if the New England Patriots defeat the Buffalo Bills, who will be resting, the number 1 pick in the NFL draft will belong to my hometown Cleveland Browns, who recently, the other day, restructured the contract of Deshaun Watson. What does that mean, in my opinion? That means not only is number 4 coming back as the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, Andrew Berry is coming back as general manager. Kevin Stefanski is coming back as head coach. You guys know, even though I am the biggest Philadelphia Eagles fan in Cleveland, again, I'm from the Cleveland area. I call myself a Browns observer. I want the Browns to do well for this city. I know how much the city of Cleveland, how much football means to this town. I know there's so much debate about there. Every freaking Sunday, every day, I have to hear, well, what Baker Mayfield did today. I get it. I know this fan base was very emotionally attached to Baker Mayfield. I know this fan base is angry at the direction of this franchise, who a couple years ago was 5 minutes away. If Chad Henne does not make that play, you can make an argument the Browns are in the AFC Championship game. Now here they are on the precipice of having a 3-14 season. I get it. And I don't want Deshaun Watson back on the football team either. I think Deshaun Watson should not be an NFL quarterback anymore. And I think the Browns are trying to double down on their mistake because they know they made a mistake and now here they are trying to correct it. I understand it. But every Browns fan out there, you guys want Kirk Cousins, you want Aaron Rodgers. And I tell you guys, here's the thing about this quarterback draft. I don't know how good Shador Sanders is going to be. We'll think he was going to be a Raider. He's not going to be a Raider anymore. We'll think he was going to be a Giant. Guess what? He's not going to be a Giant anymore, and I'm not even sure he wanted to be a Giant. I thought Shador and Deion Sanders, as you saw in my sports predictions for 2025, I thought they would land on the same team, whether it was the Giants, the Raiders, even the Cowboys. No, I don't know because I have no idea who's going to get the number 1 pick and what they're going to do with that number 1 pick. If New England stays with the number 1 pick, do they trade out of it because they have Drake May? They need wide receivers. They need running backs. They need offensive linemen. They need a whole nother 2 drafts to build the offense around Drake May. Defense is, decent. They're not terrible. They look terrible against the Chargers. That's because the Chargers came in there and took care of business because New England is not a very good football team. But Drake May is a good quarterback. He's done good with nothing around him. There's a lot of speculation out there about if New England would, take Shador at number 1, trade Drake May, get a top 3 pick, draft Travis Hunter, and there's your new combo in New England, which would be totally anti-Belichick and totally anti-New England. Maybe they fire Gerard Mayo and bring in Deion Sanders to Foxborough. That would be the complete opposite of Belichick, which I think New England needs to move away from the do your job Bill Belichick culture and go with an offensive minded head coach for Drake May and support his future. But that's an interesting scenario. I don't think Shador or Cam Ward, for that matter, really fits in Tennessee. Again, that roster is a complete mess. They're in a complete rebuild. They have good receivers. That's it. They don't have a defense or an offensive line at all. They're probably a free agency class away. Get the roster right and then go get the quarterback. Cleveland's got some foundational pieces. I mean, Joe Patonio, Wyatt Teller on the offensive line, Jerome Ford is the future running back. I really like what Judy's done at receiver, David Njoku at tight end. Defensively, we'll see what they do with Miles Garrett. I've been speculating maybe you move Miles Garrett and you essentially take his replacement at a younger and cheaper price with Mason Graham out of Michigan, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. Um, but it just sounds like for this year, for this draft class, and there's Cam Ward, there's Shador Sanders, there's some others out there. Jalen Milroe, who I really like, though I think he needs the right coach. Quinn Ewers, who has a lot of Colt McCoy, and I've said that in the past on this show. I think there's a lot of Colt McCoy in him, but maybe like Sam Darnold in Minnesota, like I thought Bo Nix with Sean Payton, JJ McCarthy with Kevin O'Connell, the right coach, the right fit. Maybe Quinn Ewers works out. I don't think Jordan Mayo is the perfect fit for a quarterback to go to. I don't know about Brian Callahan yet. I do think Kevin Stefanski could work with a young quarterback if it fits his system. I think Cam Ward would be more the pick there in Cleveland more than Shador Sanders. Um, but it's very interesting. One of these teams now at the top of the draft, Giants included, they need a quarterback, obviously, but Tennessee needs a whole roster rolled over. Giants need a whole roster over. New England, they have the quarterback, they need a whole roster rolled over. Cleveland, they need a quarterback, obviously, and they may need some more pieces. Guys are getting more expensive. But this is a very offensive tackle heavy draft. Raiders, I like their pieces on offense. They even got rid of Devontae Adams. I still like their pieces on offense. Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. They need an offensive line and they need a quarterback. And hell, even Amir Abdullah is running the way Josh Jacobs ran there a couple years ago. So most of these teams at the top of this year's draft, it's not just a quarterback issue, which obviously we see in the NFL, right? Quarterback and coach seem to fix it all. Look no further than Washington this past year. I mean, you look at the teams in the playoffs today: Kansas City, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes; Buffalo, Josh Allen, Sean McDermott; Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh; Houston, C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans; Denver, Sean Payton, Bo Nix; Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert; and then Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson, Mike Tomlin. In all seven of those cases, head coach, some offense, some defense. If they have a defensive head coach, they have a very good to excellent offensive coordinator, right? Todd Monken, Bobby Slowick, Arthur Smith. Those are not the best OCs in the world, but they're very good OCs. You have the great offensive play callers, Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, etc. What's that? Joe Brady there is an OC for Josh Allen in Buffalo. In the NFC, Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, Jared Goff, Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, that combination. Kevin O'Connell, Sam Darnold, Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur. What I presume will be Baker Mayfield, Todd Bowles, Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn. Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. All of these combinations. Jalen Hurts, offensive head coach. Sam Darnold, offensive head coach. Jordan Love, offensive head coach. Jared Goff, offensive head coach. Um, Jane Daniels is a defensive head coach, but he's got a superstar OC, I think, in Cliff Kingsbury. Baker Mayfield has a defensive head coach. He's got what many people believe will be the next great offensive mind in the league in Liam Cohen as his offensive coordinator. And obviously, Stafford's got Sean McVay, who is a great offensive coach. So you either have a quarterback and a great offensive head coach, or a quarterback and a terrific offensive coordinator. That's the difference in this league. What these teams have to figure out is Drake May, New England, we have the quarterback. We'll build the roster. Can we get the right OC? Or if we can, let's just go get an offensive head coach. Cleveland feels like they have the right head coach. I don't know about that. I don't know about the OC. you got to figure out the quarterback situation. Vegas, we don't know about the OC. We don't know about the quarterback. Giants, I feel like they have the right head coach. It's a great offensive mind of Brian Dable. They need to go get the quarterback. So that to me is when you take a look at this league, it is still. I know they don't want to talk about the running game and defense and going in the cold weather and all that. I think it is still head coach, quarterback driven league, which is why, yes, the Giants are a disaster, and maybe sometimes you need a fresh start. I don't know what's going to happen with Brian Dable. Jacksonville, you would think they have the right head coach quarterback combination Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson. It looks like to me it's not working. They may need a complete refresh. Dallas, do they stick with the Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy head coach quarterback combination, who's very good, but they're third now quarterly in the division to Washington and Philly. And if the Giants were lucky enough to find a quarterback, they may finish fourth in the division next year. No, that's not hyperbole. Um, you know, even teams like Arizona, I like Jonathan Gannon as a coach. I think Kyler Murray's a very good quarterback. Do they need an upgrade of those C to get the most out of Kyler Murray and his talent? Like, I don't know. Atlanta, Raheem Morris botches the clock against Washington the other day. I don't think he is the right head coach for the job. I think they have the quarterback. I think they need to find the right offensive coordinator. Don't know yet if Zach Robinson is that guy. Cincinnati is the one exception of the rule, right? Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor, we like. I hope that for their sake, they find a way to keep Jamar Chase and they find a way to keep T. Higgins. They need to fix their defense. Obviously, maybe firing Lou Anarumo is the answer. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. Cincinnati's the one exception to all of these rules. But that's where I see the week now. The Jets, right? They have an opening. Their quarterback situation is an abject disaster. Aaron Rodgers should not be allowed in that building. They need a complete culture reset. They need a coach that can be a leader of men. Chicago, Caleb Williams. They need, in my opinion, either a great offensive coach or a coach that's a leader of men to change that culture around. New Orleans just needs to figure out what the hell they're doing. I don't know what to think of New Orleans. I think Carolina this year, right? Dave Canales, Bryce Young. I think you can build on that for the future. Like I think in a year or two, Carolina could be competent in that division. So that's the way I see it. Again, it's a quarterback coach driven league. And that's where you're seeing here is these head coaching vacancies open up. We'll get to the playoffs. I'll give my week 18 money line picks and best bets next week. We'll be on the lookout here for potential more coaching news.